Okay, so let's take a look at challenge 26. There's quite a lot of information to unpick with this particular algorithm challenge. So we're going to just take it step by step using the same kind of process that we always do. So first of all, it's really important that we read the whole kind of scenario, but when you are doing it, you should always be looking for what our input is going to be. So is the user going to type in some input, or is the input coming in from a data structure like an array or a list? Or is it coming in from a parameter, from a function? In this particular case, it's a basic, pretty standard algorithm with nothing complicated, and it's going to be the user that inputs the actual data. So the scenario says a dog that is 5 years old is equivalent to a 42-year-old human. Ashok is writing a program which converts the age of the dog to the equivalent age for a human. The program uses the following method. The user inputs the age of the dog in years. So straight away, that's the first and most important thing that we need to look for is the input. So on the right hand side, before we actually do any code, I'm just going to do a little bit of planning and think that my variable is going to be called age of dog. Next one is if. So whenever we see the word if, we know that we're going to need to use some sort of selection, some sort of if statement. So if the age is 2 or less, so 2 or less means that we need a comparison operator, and it's going to be less or equal to. So we know that we're going to need less or equal to. And it's going to be to 2. And then the human equivalent is 12 times the age. So that is some sort of process that is taking place, some sort of calculation. So we know that we're going to need human age or human equivalent, whichever it is that you want to do, as another variable that we're going to need. And that's going to be a calculation of some description. Underneath it says if again. So we're going to need another condition as part of our if statement. Is more than. So now we know that we need another comparison operator, which is going to be greater than. The human equivalent is 24 for the first 2 years plus 6 for every additional year. So we can kind of get a rough idea of what our calculation is going to be. So I'm going to start putting this into Python and see if we can get to the final solution. So starting from the beginning, we've planned out that we're going to have an input, and our input is going to be age of dog. Now, what we should always do is think about what the best or most appropriate data type is for use when we're doing an input. So in this particular case, we're doing someone's age. Now, in general, someone's age is normally in a whole number, which is an integer. So we're going to put an integer in, and we know that it's going to be an input. Now for every bracket that we open, we need to close them. So I've opened 2 brackets, closed 2 brackets, and then we just need the sensible message to the user. So we're going to say enter your age in years, but we're going to say your dog's age, so they don't put their own age in. So that is our input done already. So on the exam, you've already got a mark for finding the input and setting up a correct or suitable input statement. Now we know that we need to use selection, so we're going to put an if statement in. And we want to compare what they've typed in. So the variable that they have typed in. So if age of dog, let's say they typed in 1, for example. If the age of the dog is less than or equal to 2, then we want to make a certain calculation. So we want to say that the human age is equal to, and in the question it says 12 times the age. So we're going to do age of dog times 12. Now I think that most people at that point should be able to do that without any problems at all. It's quite straightforward. Simple input, simple if statement, 2 variables that we've used. that are sensible names from the question. So human age equals age of dog times 12. However, it says if again. So we know that in Python, you need to use elif for the next comparison that we are going to do. So this time we're going to say age of dog is greater than 2, and then put the next condition in. So if the age of the dog is greater than 2, then human age is a little bit more complicated this time, what we've got to do for the maths. So if it's more than 2, the human equivalent is 24 for the first 2 years, plus 6 for every year after that. So we need to basically take the age of the dog, but subtract 2 so that we can remove those first 2 years. And then we need to multiply that answer by 6 for all of those extra years that we haven't counted for. Now, obviously, we need to do this so that it works out in the correct order. So we're just going to do everything in brackets. It's the easiest way. So if we've got age of dog minus 2, multiplied by 6, but then we also need to add on the 24 for the first 2 years. So we're going to add the 24 as well. And I'm just going to put that in brackets. So it's going to do age of dog minus 2, and then it's going to multiply that by 6. And once it's got that answer, it's going to add the 24 for the first 2 years. Then what we're going to do is just say else, and if they type anything else in, then there's been some sort of error if they've typed in something that isn't an integer, essentially. So we're going to just say print error. Or if they type in 0 or -1 or something like that. So we're going to say print error if they type anything else in. And then the overall output is going to be essentially just human age that we're going to output. But we need to give them some sort of message to go with that. So we're going to say the human equivalent age of your dog is. Now notice the way I've ended my string of text and then put a comma in and then the actual value of the variable here as well. So if we just give this a little run, make sure everything works as it's supposed to. Enter your dog's age in years. Now at this point now we need to start putting in some things that make it a little bit easier to use. So at the moment, if I type in the age at the end of the sentence, it's a little bit confusing. So lots of people will press enter before they actually type a number in, which is why it comes up like this. It's expecting some sort of input and there wasn't one. So what we're going to do is on the first line, as part of the output message, we are going to put in /n so that it automatically moves it down onto another line. That is a form of maintainability, makes the program a little bit easier to follow, and it's also a way of defensive design to stop the user actually typing something in that's not what it's meant to be. So now we could test it, and if we put something that's less than 2, which is 1 is 12 because it's being multiplied by 12. If we run it again, and we'll test it for something higher, so let's say the dog is 5, and straight away we've got some sort of error, and it's because I've put age of age. So we're just going to change age of age to age of dog. It's always good practice to just, I know it sounds stupid, but make mistakes, because it helps you to test and debug and spot where you've made silly mistakes. So here we go, enter your dog's age in years. The human equivalent age of your dog is 42. And if we look back to the original question, it says here 5-year-old dog should be 42. So we can know that it's now working correctly. So that is our code. It's not massively difficult. The one bit that a lot of people would struggle on is this calculation here, because obviously you've got to do the things in a certain order first. There are other ways of doing this problem, but I think that that's a pretty straightforward one that everyone should be able to understand. There's nothing massively complicated going on here. There is one other thing that we could do, which would be to get rid of the else statement and simply make this an else statement. And that way, if your dog is 2 or less, then it'll do this, and if it's anything other than 2 or less, it will do this. Now the problem with that is if they do put a negative number in, it's still going to do this calculation, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to keep it just like this. So that's challenge 26 completed.